Hello, well, welcome today, 20th of November 2021, to the first International Draniki Day in the United Kingdom. This is a partnership meeting between the People's Embassy of Belarus, Belarus People's Embassy in the United Kingdom, and the Anglo-Belarusian Society. I'm going to introduce you. Aleś Patriciu is going to come down sideways on, our chair, who is organizer, coordinator of the People's Embassy. I'm Dr. Alan Flowers, the chair of the Anglo-Belarusian Society. And before we start to consume these delightful delicacies, the Draniki, I'm going to introduce you to a very good and long-standing friend of mine. I first met exactly 29 years, and I think it is now 5 days from now. It was the Monday in November 1992. A young man called Aleś Bely came into my life. And is still there very much as a Belarusian. I will leave him now to.
Sorry, I think it was 1993.
Okay, let's sorry.
28 years ago.
My first visit to Minsk was actually in November 1992, and then we travelled together to the exclusion zone in 1993. I'll have to jog your memory about the 1992 November one. Anyway, not my history. It's Draniki Day, and we're passing over to our guest speaker, Aleś Bely, who's speaking to us all the way from Tel Aviv today. Thank you, Aleś.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting. I'm pleased to know that there is a special Belarusian place in the United Kingdom where people can gather so loosely and friendly, and to celebrate the presence of Belarusian national spirit and hope in the United Kingdom. I'm a food historian who is studying the cuisine of Belarus and Lithuania for more than 22 years, sorry, quite a long time, by single person standards. And I was invited to talk briefly about the history of this dish and its place in modern Belarusian identity. But first of all, maybe I will disappoint some people that Draniki, or the Belarusian version of grated potato pancakes, is not unique. Actually, similar dishes are well known, if not all over the world, but at least all over Europe, in the North America, and in many other parts of the world. Presumably, they have come to Belarus somewhere in the middle of the 19th century. We don't have any written evidences because all our knowledge comes only from perhaps from post-war reality, but presumably from other oblique data, we can think that Draniki, whatever they were called in the time, appeared in Belarus in the middle of the 19th century, together with other grated potato dishes. And to a large extent, the people who brought them to the country were Jewish innkeepers who largely influenced the culinary mode of their consumers, of their clients, in karchma, in the Belarusian inn. And in fact, in this time, potatoes, very much like in Ireland and some other countries, became a staple food, which helped to save people from starvation. Potato is rather cheap, rather productive, let's say, vegetable roots, and compared to their predecessors at the table, like for instance turnip or other roots, they were more convenient to grow, to pick up, to store, and very quickly potato dishes spread all over the country, and sometimes their names were borrowed from the names of the preceding flour dishes, like klёцки, for instance, like kolduny, like babka, and so it went that in rather late time, I think not earlier than in 1960s, perhaps even 1970s, Draniki began to be perceived as the main Belarusian national dish. It was perhaps deliberately popularized by Soviet authorities, which I believe needed a little bit simplified image of a Belarusian, of a potato eater, not very demanding person. And as I said, Draniki are not unique. Most of European countries have their own kind of grated potato dish, rather similar to Belarusian Draniki. Of course, there are some different versions as well. For instance, Irish potato pancakes or potato fritters are called boxties. They are made in a slightly different way, with much more flour added and with whey. Or for instance, American hash browns are made not from grated, but from what to call it, from don't remember exact what, a kind of fibers chopped, finely chopped potatoes, but when they are fried, the taste is quite similar to it. It is like using very coarse grate for grating, and in some countries they are also considered important national dishes, but perhaps nowhere they have taken such a big place in the national cuisine as a whole. And this is mainly because the Belarusian cuisine as such is not very popular in Belarus itself, because for many decades Belarusians were ashamed of any manifestation of national identity, including cuisine, and I think they have done very little effort in the late Soviet decades, and surprisingly even less after gaining independence, to defend, to develop, and to represent with dignity the national cuisine. And as a result, Dranik is one of the few examples of dishes that are known to everybody. And I'm afraid that most of the people from the street, when asked, will fail to name Belarusian national dish number 2, number 3, number 4, so to say. And this is very sad. Also, as I said, that Draniki most probably were borrowed from Jewish innkeepers, but vice versa, the most popular Jewish name for Draniki, Bulba Latkis, was borrowed from Belarusian language. Although even in the Jewish cookbooks, this fact is rarely recognized, if at all. And on the other side, yes, here I mentioned this this fact because in fact Belarusian version of Yiddish included many Belarusian words, and this is something that modern day Belarusians can be proud of, because not only we were influenced by others, but we were also influencing others. And I think this is a very good case, because I think that the best thing in any cultural relations is not when you dominate or someone dominates over you, but the best option is when there is a mutually useful cultural exchange. And Belarus as a country, I think, should aspire, should pursue a policy of underlining this cultural exchange with many other peoples, which in fact created the country as it is. So perhaps this is everything that I was willing to say as a guest lecturer or whoever, and I will be very grateful if you have any questions. I will gladly answer them. But this short historical note, historical information about Draniki, I think is finished.
We are now also displaying, you might like to say something about what inspired you to write this book that was published now, I think, some 12 years ago.
Yes.
Is it still one of the few, maybe the only English language Belarusian cookbooks?
Yeah, and I think one of the few books on popular Belarusian culture in English at all. Yes, indeed, it was 13 years ago from now that I was suggested by these respected New York publishers, Hippocrene Books, who are specialized in minority literature for the Anglo-Saxon world. They are publishing cookbooks, books on history, phrase books. In total, they published books in about 190 languages, as far as I know. And I think this is a very rare example in book publishing. And for me, it was an honor to participate in such project, because by the time that they invited me to write this Belarusian cookbook, they already had similar books on the cuisines of all neighbors of Belarus, and in some cases more than one, because historically this publishing house was founded by a Russian person whose several generations of ancestors lived in Poland. Right, and it was a very good experience for myself. But after the book was published, I had a lot of sad experience because I was happy and proud that, oh, I'm someone who not only wrote but also published the first thick and nice Belarusian cookbook in English, but I've failed to attract any attention to my book in Belarus itself. I tried to convince local booksellers that this is a nice piece, and there are some tourists coming in Belarus who will be interested to buy such book, at least as a souvenir. But I don't know whether I'm a bad businessman, but the publishers themselves tried through their own channels to find a distributor in Belarus, and they also failed. So eventually, of course, the whole circulation was sold out, but for the publishers, it was the very first case that they faced, that the country to which culture the book was dedicated failed to produce any orders for the book inside the country.
I'm now going to pass you, Aleś, to Jarek Krivoy, who you see as the second image. His image is appearing under the name Aleś UK. Maybe you know Jarek Krivoy. He'll introduce himself. Okay, over to Jarek.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation, and well done on speaking in English. It's such a technical topic, and not many people in Belarus would be able to do it in English. My name is Jarek Krivoy. I'm, among other things, the editor of the Journal of Belarusian Studies. My question is about Belarusian cuisine pre-potato, because potato was brought in relatively recently, right? And for hundreds of years, there was no potato in Belarus. So what were people eating in the past? What was, let's say, the peasants, what were they eating, and what the higher society was eating? I would be grateful for your introduction into history of Belarusian cooking. Thanks.
My answer will consist of two parts. First of all, about the Belarusian name of potato, bulba, and Lithuanian word is very close to it, bulve, whereas Poles use different words, ziemniaki, or they use kartoffel for some time as well. Well, the name was borrowed from from other roots which appeared in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth some 30-40 years earlier than potato. In present Belarusian it's called topinambur, or Jerusalem artichoke in English. And they were popular for a short time, but then neglected. And when similar American innovation arrived, people remember this name, bulba, which was earlier applied to a different kind of plant. And from approximately the middle of 18th century, when we may talk about rather noticeable culture of potato in Belarus, it was applied to what we now know as potato. Before potato became really popular, and it happened after 1830s approximately, in different parts of the country in different time. And the growth of consumption or of cultivation initially of potato happened because they were demanded for spirit production. Because since 1830s, Belarusian distilleries have learned how to produce spirit and vodka from potato, and eventually this led to the growth of potatoes, and a little bit later also to the growth of consumption. Before this, other edible roots occupied approximately the current niche of potato, being Swedes, turnips, parsnip, and other similar roots, which gradually lost competition to potatoes because of the universal trend to unification, to simplification, and so on. I hope I answered your question, if I understood it correctly.
And how about what poor people were eating and more affluent people were eating? What are the differences before potato? Because now people eat potato or rice, and in the past, how was it different?
Well, of course, the full answer to your question will take more than an hour. Perhaps I will try to put it as short as possible. Of course, the diet of wealthy people contained much more meat above all, and this was a sign of well-being, of social status, to eat as much meat as possible. Of course, the diet of ordinary people was based upon bread above all. And it's not by chance that even potato is symbolically called the second bread. It shows that, as I told earlier, that when potato dishes arrived, they gradually ousted previous bread and cereals, and much the same as in other European countries, bread and cereals were the staple food, especially for poor. For rich people, meat, to less extent dish, to less extent vegetables were also comprising a significant part of the menu. We may talk more about which meat and which fish, because actually I very much recommend you several of books of mine, apart from this English book, which is already expired anyway. I hardly can find a single copy at my house, but I recently published in around 2 editions of in Russian language of my book called "Белорусская кухня. Кулинарный путеводитель." It is perhaps the book with the book on Belarusian cuisine with the largest circulation over the last 2 decades. So much that there were two editions. Every has a circulation of about 7,000 copies. For Belarus, it's rather large circulation. And I believe there are answers to most of questions about Belarusian cuisine, its history, its present day, that you may ask. But of course, I will answer any additional questions.
I'd like to come in with a question. Having, you can see close up, my first ever Draniki product.
Okay.
And
Congratulations.
in producing this, I had to pick up a grater. And for the uninitiated who've never cooked a Draniki before, actually the first question that came into my mind is, which part of the grater do I grate small holes, medium-sized ones? And thinking about your different potato use in Scotland, we do have a potato pancake, but it's actually using a ground potato flour. It takes the potato down to a very fine granular state. So the question I have is, a differentiation is clearly the substance. I ended up, you can probably see, I've got a rather stringy grating that I did, and clearly that affects, you know, the tactile experience as you are eating the Draniki. A clear distinction in Draniki is the way you do the grating of the potato. So can you tell me what is considered the appropriate grating method? And also that there's a tool. So that had to be in people's houses. I mean, for the poor people, having these graters, not so obvious and simple to make the Draniki. Yeah. So it's a technical question about the grating and what's.
I think now most of people are using food processors, and in these processors usually grates are somewhat coarser than handmade. Yes, this kind of grate was used in most homes before these food processors came. So I think most of Belarusians are exposed to several degrees of coarseness, and as I told you about hash browns, yes, which are they are not even grated, but rather chopped, but like fibers. It's not like they're not mashed, not grated into a kind of thick liquid, but there are long fibers, quite discernible. And sometimes I myself also, when I didn't have a fine grater, I was using very coarse, and of course the texture is different, but the difference in taste is not so big as you might expect. And I think in various families there are their own preferences, and there are no. Usually, people, when you see when you start talking about Draniki in Belarus, there are always very hot discussions because people insist that the recipe that they use in their family, that came from their family, is the only true one.
Question.
Yes.
We have the tools. So we have these 4 sides.
Yeah.
So which one is the correct one?
No, not okay. This one I probably would. I personally would probably use this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. This is what I ended up with, because these are standard British graters. And I started with my potato trying with a small fine.
This
was disaster.
This will also do, but this will be
that's right.
Too coarse.
For people viewing, this side produces this kind of thing. Exactly. Even though the size is wrong.
You should also keep in mind that not only Draniki, but also cepeliny or plotki z duszami, or babka, or kugel, and other grated potato dishes are also made from potato. And food processors suggesting a little bit coarser version of great, which is more interchangeable for various dishes.
Aleś, we've got a fantastic audience here, and in fact, somebody earlier shouted out they had your book. Maybe we could have a question from somebody in the audience, or a comment even.
Okay.
How did you enjoy the book?
Hi, it's me. I have your book.
Oh,
I think I purchased it a year or 2 years ago, and I had delivered it to London. So I'm really enjoying it. It's in my very important space in the kitchen, and I hope you will give us more of your amazing books and recipes soon.
yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Actually,
I hope that all of us soon can come back to Belarus and make an amazing gastro
Yeah.
tour through all the villages with you. It will be the most greatest thing happening to everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, now I think
Actually, I'm dreaming about republishing it, because actually the publishing house is ready to give me back publishing rights. But as I told you, that with the current situation in the country, I mean, there is very little sense to publish it somewhere abroad without a chance to bring it to the country. But Belarusian publishers at the moment are a little bit scared, and I'm very much tired about unprofessional approach to publishing and to the distribution of my book. You see, and although nothing from the legal point of view prevents from the second edition, or perhaps a second extended edition, but the current situation, both with Belarusian politics and with coronavirus situation, doesn't encourage publishers to go into this project.
Well, I'd encourage you, and as somebody who has, in practice, as you can see, used it to produce cuisine. And although at least in an updated version, I think you'll have to remove the pounds now, these weight, the old British weight. It was very thoughtful of Aleś to put in the pounds and the ounces, but I think people now have got used to kilograms and
Actually,
in Britain. Maybe you put both.
Were publishers who insisted upon
I'm sure.
American measures.
Sorry,
that was my
thinking it was
initiative.
British, of course, it's for the American market. I completely forgot about America. Absolutely. Well, I think we're rather coming maybe to a close, unless there's any last comment.
I have a question.
And even more.
Well, the first thing to comment, I remember coming to UK and looking for the food processor with the right disc for Dranik. I knew that Bosch would sell in Belarus, but they would supply with the additionally with the right disc. Unfortunately, it's you couldn't. It was impossible to do to get anything in UK. But my question is about this other dishes like kolduny, babka, and does it have this kind of regional kind of traditions? Could you tell more about this? Is it like more closer to on Western Belarus, the Eastern Belarus, or which part of Belarus is it? There is different.
Well, I very much like the so-called cepeliny, or sometimes they're called pyzy, rather on the Polish border, somewhere in Volkovysk or Zelva or Slonim, perhaps. And in the north of Belarus, especially in Polotsk, Lepel, from where my ancestors come, they're called very romantically klocki z duszami, dumplings with souls. meaning that the stuffing is the sole and the potato duff wrapping is body. And this is very actually very old, perhaps pagan, pre-Christian tradition, even before potato, as I said. Perhaps other flour dumplings were called klocki z duszami. And there is a very nice poem by Grigor Baradulin, Чищу бульбу, where he mentions this dish. И на дяды так само клёцки ели. Припоминали, что недолго в теле душа светло, дроготка несе. Ну, I will not cite the whole poem at the moment, but indeed there is the dish with very good symbolism, especially connected with the pagan fest of Dyady, which was also incorporated by the Catholic Church into the Catholic tradition, folk Catholic tradition. I think in Belarus, all these grated potato dishes are of approximately the same age. The same is true about babka and potato kishka, potato sausage, which is very similar to babka, but is made in casings. Unfortunately, whereas in Eastern Poland, these dishes are, I mean, babka, for instance, and potato kishka are still very popular. There are even a world championship in baking kishka and babka in Suprasil, which happens every June for about 25 years already. And somehow they managed to market it, of course, as a tourist event, as a food representation event. Belarus generally, I would say, even now is very shy and reluctant to do such things seriously on a large scale with a real mass enthusiasm, because I think because people are still very frightened of any initiative. Most of them live within one day prospect, and this is very sad, because I would say that historically kishka is a Belarusian dish above all, more than Polish and Lithuanian, which is partly confirmed by the fact that the championship takes place in Suprasil, which used to be a stronghold of Belarusian culture for many centuries due to its famous monastery. And there is even a Belarusian restaurant in Suprasil, which is not so frequent in Poland. But I haven't heard about participation, even about participation of Belarusian teams from Belarus in this championship, unfortunately. And of course, it's not easily to cross the border, especially now in the light of the sad events that we all face at the Belarusian-Polish border.
Any more comments? You're hearing us, Aleś? Yes?
Yes, yes.
Yes? Loud? Speak up, come forward. Maybe not. I think we now have an audience here that smelling and seeing the Draniki are ready for actually tasting this this real cuisine. I might like to prompt you briefly, though. Something you referred to about the potential of Belarus cuisine. And I know that Aleś Bely studied and wrote extensively about Belarusian beer and cheeses and maybe others. So just very briefly, in any economic revival for Belarus? What do you think would be the culinary and the foodstuff areas where you think an industries could have really good potential to return to the potential, to return to the excellence I know you have studied from earlier periods?
Well, of course, milk products are very important for Belarus, including cheeses, and officially Belarus boasts to be worldwide cheese exporter number 4, number 3 variety upon the year, but this is mainly Belarusian cheese export to Russia, which is very, I would say, very low price market, and surprisingly, the most sold Belarusian cheese in Russia has a brand name Russian, which is very symbolic. My dream is, for many years, I had a dream to write a book about the history of Belarusian dairy industry, about cheese making. I have gathered quite a lot of interesting facts about this. But so far, I faced the lack of interest of the industry towards collective representation of Belarusian food products at the world market. Because, for instance, in fact, Belarus can be proud of any products, of some products, not only in the past, but also in the present. Especially, I would say this about kvass, much more than about beer. And I many times was in my publication, I was urging the Belarusian kvass producers to unite and to form a kind of collective brand, emphasizing the importance of live fermented bread kvass in order to promote it collectively to the external markets. Something that I don't know that Colombia does about coffee, or Kenya or India about tea. The same could be done with, for instance, with Belarusian bread, with Belarusian products from cranberries and so on. But I think that still we have a very noticeable lack of national pride in this area, not only in this area, of course, but I may speak responsibly, talking about the past and the present of Belarusian food, of Belarusian cuisine, and this lack of dignity eventually has a economic dimension as well, because it influences the volume of Belarusian export, or export of food, export of tourist service, and this is something that Belarusians who consider themselves patriots should think about, because patriotism is not only about crying slogans, waving flags. It is also about, or maybe more, it is about daily routine efforts in practical implementation of your culture in competition at the world market with other cultures, and of course in cooperation with other cultures as well.
I want to just, can you hear us?
Sorry.
Aleś, can you hear?
Yes.
I just want to tell you that I heard you speaking about dairy products, and my great grandfather was a producer of cheese in Palanechka, which is a small village.
Не Барановичи.
Yes, with a Radziwiłł, no, yeah, castle or something. They're now trying to restore it. And yeah, so I don't know a lot, but I'm very proud about it.
Yeah, most probably it was so-called Litovsky, Lithuanian cheese, which, on the history of which I wrote extensively, and it was the most popular, most widely spread variety of fermented cheese with a very bright history, almost forgotten now. But if you ever happen to be in Глубокое district, there is a family Tkachovy who is reinventing this tradition of forgotten Belarusian cheese brands, including this Lithuanian Obrachotsky cheese, which most probably your ancestors were producing.
Well, thank you very much.
And thank you, Aleś. We're going to close with two actions. Some words of appreciation in a moment. Also, Mikolaj Pascal wants also is going to close. So if everybody could stay in place as we close that. Just firstly, in terms of appreciation, I want on behalf of the Anglo-Belarusian Society to express appreciation on behalf of Belarusians here and their British friends. Great appreciation to the idea for this day that came from the Belarusian embassy and Belarusian consulate, Belarusians in Scotland. It was an idea that emerged from this new, very connected, much more connected Belarusian community we have in the UK. And it was proposed, and of course there are the established institutions of the Anglo-Belarusian Society and the Association of Belarusians in Great Britain, and this is very symbolic of the unified support for such events that all sections of the community, the Belarusian community, have here. And Sandra has a lot of associations with one of the newer organizations, Najeia, as well, that has been acting as a superb communication network for events like this. So appreciation, we are in the building of the Belarusian Charitable Trust, also in part managed by the Association of Belarusians in Great Britain. I want to express thanks for us being able to gather here today. That's thanks to the Belarusian Charitable Trust and also to the Association of Belarusians in Great Britain. But above all, what's made this event, it was Aleś Bely, a renowned, maybe more renowned than he even knows himself, expert in this field, and somebody who's a very respected historical authority on Belarus, with clearly much work ongoing and to be done. And thank you for not just giving us the 15 to 20 minutes we originally asked for, but has now been with us for well over an hour of his Saturday afternoon in what probably was a nice, sunny, pleasant Tel Aviv. But thank you, and let's have everybody here in Penrose allowed.
Thank you very much for the invitation
Bravo!
and for your attention.
Dziękuję veliki.